You watch self-help videos every day. You save quotes. You understand the ideas. But your life doesn't change. Every night you feel productive because you learn something new. Every morning you delay the same actions. The problem is not that you lack discipline, and it's not that you're lazy. The real problem is this: you're consuming information instead of transforming behavior. The more you know, the harder it becomes to act. And if you don't see this trap early, you can spend years improving yourself without actually moving forward. At first, learning feels like progress. You discover a new concept, a new framework, a new method that promises clarity, confidence, control. Your brain lights up, dopamine fires. You feel smarter, more prepared, more capable. But quietly, something dangerous begins to form. Instead of acting, you start collecting. You collect ideas the way others collect tools, except you never build anything. One video becomes 5. One book becomes a shelf. One insight becomes a folder you'll review later. And with every new piece of information, the pressure increases. Because now action is no longer simple. It has to be perfect. You don't just want to start exercising, you want the optimal routine. You don't just want to focus, you want the best system, the best habit loop, the best morning ritual. So you delay. You tell yourself you're preparing, but preparation slowly becomes avoidance. This is the modern self-improvement paradox. The more you learn, the harder it becomes to move. Your mind becomes crowded. 10 voices, 10 methods, 10 conflicting rules about what you should do. One says hustle harder. Another says slow down. One says wake up at 5 a.m. Another says protect your sleep at all costs. You don't know which voice to follow, so you follow none. Instead, you keep watching. Because watching is safe. Watching feels productive. Watching doesn't risk failure. Action does. Action forces you to choose, and choice means responsibility. If you try one method and it fails, you can't blame ignorance anymore. So your brain does what it does best under pressure. It overloads itself. Psychologically, this is decision fatigue. Too many options collapse motivation. But emotionally, it feels like something else. It feels like heaviness, like mental noise, like being busy without moving. You're exhausted, not from doing too much, but from thinking too much. This is why you can feel tired even after a day of learning. Your nervous system never rests because it's constantly processing input without release through action. Knowledge enters, but nothing exits. No embodiment, no repetition, no proof to the body that change is happening. So confidence erodes, not because you're incapable, but because your body hasn't experienced success, only ideas about success. Over time, a subtle identity forms. I'm someone who understands. I'm someone who knows. I'm someone who studies growth. But not, I'm someone who does. And the longer this gap remains, the more painful action becomes. Because now, every step feels like it has to justify all the things you already know. This is why people quit not at the beginning, but after learning a lot. Beginners act freely. They don't know enough to hesitate. But the informed beginner, the one stuck between knowing and doing, is the most paralyzed of all. You don't fail because you lack tools. You fail because you're buried under them. And unless this pattern breaks, self-help becomes self-sabotage. Not because growth is wrong, but because growth without action becomes a cage.
In the world of the samurai, knowledge was never collected. It was forged. A student did not arrive to learn many techniques. He arrived to submit to one. One stance, one cut, one movement repeated until the body no longer asked questions. A master would demonstrate a single strike, slow, precise, almost unimpressive to an untrained eye, and then he would say nothing. No explanations, No motivational speeches, no variations, only repetition. The student would perform the same motion again and again, hundreds of times, thousands, not to memorize it, but to become it. In samurai training, knowledge came last. The body learned first. The mind followed. This is what modern people misunderstand. We think mastery begins with clarity. The samurai knew mastery begins with submission. Submission to boredom. Submission to slowness. Submission to doing the same thing long after it stops feeling interesting. A samurai did not ask, "Is there a better technique?" Because a better technique meant nothing if the current one had not yet entered the bones. Depth mattered more than variety. One imperfect strike, refined through discipline, was deadlier than 10 techniques practiced shallowly. Why? Because under pressure, the mind collapses. In battle, there is no time to recall options, no space to compare methods. Only what the body already knows survives. This is why samurai training avoided excess information. Too many techniques created hesitation. Hesitation created death. So they trained until response became immediate, not automatic, but unblocked. The sword moved before thought could interfere. Contrast this with the modern learner. You read about productivity, then mindfulness, then discipline, then dopamine, then motivation. Each idea replaces the last before it has time to land. Your mind becomes sharp, but your body remains untrained. The samurai would see this as dangerous, not because learning is wrong, but because learning without embodiment is fragile. Knowledge that hasn't passed through repetition cannot be trusted under stress. The samurai understood something essential. You don't rise to the level of what you know, you fall to the level of what you've practiced. That is why they limited input, not to stay ignorant, but to protect depth. One movement, one discipline, one path walked fully. Modern life rewards accumulation. Samurai culture rewarded integration. And integration is slow. It requires choosing one thing and ignoring everything else. It requires letting go of the comfort of knowing more for the discomfort of doing better. The samurai did not ask how much they knew. They asked how deeply it had entered their body. That difference is the difference between information and transformation.
This is the shift most people never make. They believe knowledge creates change, but knowledge only creates potential. Action is what converts potential into reality. The human nervous system does not update itself through understanding. It updates through experience. You can know how confidence works. You can explain the psychology behind habits. You can recite every principle of focus. But until your body performs a different behavior, nothing inside you actually changes. This is why knowing what to do feels so frustrating. You understand the solution, yet you remain the same person. Because the brain does not rewire from ideas, it rewires from repetition. One action, repeated daily, sends a stronger signal than 10 concepts understood once. This is what the samurai intuitively practiced. They did not chase insight, they chased integration. Modern self-help reverses the order. It floods the mind with explanations and hopes behavior will follow. But behavior rarely follows explanation. Explanation follows behavior. Think about how you learned to walk. No one taught you theory. No one explained balance. Your body experimented, failed, adjusted, until walking became natural. That same process still governs change. The reason too much knowledge slows progress is because it shifts attention away from the body and into the mind. The mind evaluates, compares, doubts. The body learns by doing. This is why one action beats 10 ideas. And action forces commitment. It forces friction. It forces feedback. Ideas do none of these. Ideas feel clean. Action is messy. But messiness is where adaptation happens. Every time you take a small action, you collapse uncertainty. You stop asking which method is best and start learning what happens when I do this. That question creates momentum. 10 pieces of knowledge create noise. One action creates direction. And direction, imperfect, imperfect, is more valuable than clarity without movement. The deepest trap is thinking you're not ready. Readiness is not a mental state. It is a byproduct of repetition. You don't act because you feel ready. You feel ready because you've acted before. This is why knowledge-heavy people often feel stuck. They are waiting for certainty that only action can provide. The samurai never waited to feel ready. They trained until readiness was irrelevant. So the real insight is simple but uncomfortable. If you want change, you must value doing poorly over understanding perfectly. One imperfect action done consistently will outperform a library of unused ideas. That is not motivational advice. It is how the nervous system works.
The shift doesn't begin with motivation. It begins with subtraction. Not adding another book, not saving another video, not searching for a better explanation, but asking one quiet question. What am I already learning that I'm not applying? For most people, the answer is uncomfortable because it reveals something simple. The problem was never lack of knowledge. The problem was lack of focus. Going deeper means choosing one idea and temporarily rejecting all others. This feels dangerous at first. Your mind resists. What if this isn't the best method? What if I'm missing something important? What if there's a smarter way? These thoughts feel intelligent, but they are fear wearing logic as a disguise. Depth requires commitment, and commitment removes the safety of endless options. When you stop learning more, your mind becomes quieter, not immediately, but gradually. The noise fades because there is nothing new to process. Instead, attention turns inward, toward effort, toward friction, toward resistance. This is where real progress begins. You start noticing details you never saw before, not because they were hidden, but because you were distracted. Going deeper changes how time feels. At first, repetition feels slow. Then it feels boring. Then it feels pointless. And then something clicks. Movements become smoother. Decisions become simpler. Confidence becomes grounded. Not because you learned something new, but because your body now trusts what it has practiced. This is the opposite of modern learning culture. We are taught that progress looks like accumulation, more notes, more bookmarks, more saved content. But depth looks empty from the outside. Less input, fewer ideas, narrow focus, which is why so few people choose it. They mistake silence for stagnation. The samurai never did. They understood that silence is where refinement happens. The shift, then, is not dramatic. It is quiet. It is the moment you stop asking, "What else should I learn?" and start asking, "How well am I doing this one thing?" This shift restores agency. You stop outsourcing progress to information and reclaim it through effort. You no longer feel behind because you are no longer chasing. You are building, slowly, deliberately, from the inside out. And once this shift occurs, learning regains its value, because now new information is not consumed, it is tested. The solution is not extreme, it is precise. Each day, choose one idea and apply it. Not 5, not 3, 1. This rule protects you from overload.
When there is only one action, your mind cannot negotiate. No comparison, no optimization, no delay, just execution. Start with something you already know. If you've learned about focus, apply one rule. For example, remove distractions for 30 minutes. If you've learned about discipline, apply one behavior. Show up at the same time each day. If you've learned about breathing, apply one technique, 5 minutes once a day. The size of the action does not matter. Consistency does. The goal is not performance. The goal is embodiment. Ask yourself one question each morning. What is the single behavior that proves I understand? Not what sounds impressive, not what feels productive, what proves understanding through action. At first, this will feel limiting. You'll want to do more. You'll want to add complexity. Resist that impulse. Complexity is often avoidance in disguise. One action per day creates a chain. After a week, your body recognizes the pattern. After a month, your identity begins to shift. You stop seeing yourself as someone who learns and start seeing yourself as someone who practices. That identity is powerful because it restores trust. You trust yourself to act, not someday, today. And once trust returns, learning becomes safe again, because it no longer replaces action, it supports it. This is how progress becomes real, not through knowing more, but through doing less, better.
Right now, you don't need another video. You don't need another explanation. You already know enough. So when this video ends, don't save it. Don't rewatch it. Don't look for something similar. Choose one idea you already understand and act on it today. One small action. No optimization, no preparation, just proof. Because progress doesn't come from consuming more, it comes from committing to less. If this message resonates, close this video and begin. And if you return as someone who practiced, not someone who watched.